Survivor has been on the air for 25 years now. Nearly 50 seasons are in the books, and it's come a long way from where it first began. In some ways, the show is barely recognizable when you compare season 1 to today, but I would then argue that's more on the show side than the game side of things, and for that matter, it's not always a bad thing. As the times change and the product changes with it, the audience changes with it. I believe this show can theoretically exist forever, and one day we'll look back on these times and reminisce. And before we turn the page into the 50s and beyond, I want to remark on where we first began, how the game has taken shape from its early days, and which moments led to the greatest evolutions the game of Survivor has ever seen. Internet, I look at the game of Survivor to be one amorphous blob at its core. That is to say, all of the usual expected strategies aren't actually systems or mechanisms that are built into the game. They're just that. They're strategies to successfully weave your way through it. The game itself is a tribe of people who usually get a single challenge to protect a certain amount of them each cycle. And then there's Tribal Council, where everyone votes and the player with the most votes is eliminated. You can have 2 tribes, 3 tribes, 4 tribes, heck, even just 1 tribe. Tribe count is flexible, just like the amount of immunity necklaces is flexible. Reward challenges, tribe swaps, hidden idols, and advantages, all of those are optional, they're extra. So long as a jury forms, anywhere from a single person to the entire cast, and they vote for the winner, the game is afoot.
How do you balance the ruthlessness required to get to the final 2 with the likability needed to get the final vote?
The finalists, they can range from 2 players to 3 players, maybe even 4 one day. The jury size can change from season to season. Survivor has a very flexible structure that is airtight in its implementation. It's so simple, yet offers so many variables, and it makes the game all the more unpredictable and fun to watch play out. Now look, I say all that to introduce the first major evolution of this game, because even when Mark Burnett, the original showrunner and executive producer who adopted the show for US syndication back in 2000, even when he attempted to glean where Survivor was going in its first season, he was surprised by what he got. One word: alliances. The first major evolution, the most dramatic evolution of the game, was when players decided to band together to oust others not in their group. I mean, tribes were already pre-existing alliances of sorts, creating an us versus them mentality from the jump, but alliances were created by the players as early as episode 1 to protect themselves from being on the bottom of some artificial pecking order. The producers anticipated the show to be more about surviving the elements, and of course surviving each other as everyone had their differences. But they didn't anticipate it being this cutthroat so quickly, especially on camera, being broadcast to the nation. Hundreds of millions of people. Surely some ethics and morals would kick in, right? The question of what's fair when the game has no shape beyond the basic structure I just outlined was at the forefront of everyone's minds. Is it fair to band together within your own team? Wouldn't that go against the point of the show? Maybe, but then the show was a game when you distill it all down, and so why not work together to increase your odds of surviving the vote? I mean, you want to talk about surviving the elements, it's not like the producers are going to let you actually die out there. Sure, Dirk can run faster than Sue, but Sue is more loyal to you than he is, and what's more important to you winning this game? Dirk being more athletic, or Sue being more loyal?
The whole idea of an alliance is to make sure we're all voting the same way. Sue and I had discussed on our own about getting Richard in the same vote and us 3 having the same vote.
We have alliances that are happening within the group, and you're gonna have that. Just because, everybody's, hey, there's money involved.
We really could control our fate, because if one of us blows up, trustworthiness-wise, then this whole thing's out the window, and it's a free-for-all.
3 of us against the world.
Susan, straight up, is there an alliance?
No.
But being in an alliance is just the beginning, as we saw the first successful alliance, the Toggy 4, attempt to run Season 1 all the way to the end. And they did, but it was messy and a bit disorganized and was prone to being upset. So here we go with that second evolution, which is the creation of an organized structure within the alliance. One word: positioning. where you stand in an alliance is oftentimes just as important as being in one in the first place. Because consider this, every alliance is ultimately good for one person. Because there's only one winner, that means any given alliance is ultimately carrying one person towards their win condition. Within that alliance are a few other people aiding that person onward, and unless you are the person in front, you are going to need to wake up and smell the coffee one day and realize that it might be time to abandon ship. The best early example of this evolution is from Tina Wesson on Season 2, The Australian Outback, when she straight up changed the hierarchy of her early game alliance by flipping on them at their third tribal council vote. Tina began the season on a tribe of 8 and joined a majority alliance of 5. For the first 2 votes, her alliance picked off 2 players on the outs. However, Tina realized that she wasn't at the top of this alliance's pecking order. 3 other players had a stronger bond with each other than she did, and so she sought a way to change that. It wasn't enough to just be safe with the numbers, because eventually those numbers would turn on her. Prior to her third tribal council, Tina solicited another alliance mate, Colby, to join her and Keith in flipping on the alliance. She actually approached Mitchell first, but that didn't work out clearly. Tina, Colby, and Keith's votes, their 3 votes, would force a tiebreaker, and given the current rules around tiebreakers, their trio would win the day. Tina overthrew the power at the top to assume control, putting her in the driver's seat to win the game. And from that point on, she held a solid, structured alliance with herself and Colby as the top 2, then Keith as their third, followed by an outer layer of Amber and Jerry, who were remnants of that 5-person alliance, who were then deliberately picked off by Tina later in the game when their position in the alliance didn't matter anymore. The exact same fate that Tina was about to face, but instead, Tina flipped the script and the game evolved yet again.
You have 4 or 5 young people playing. You know, they've got so much chemistry that it is almost second nature just to just immediately gravitate towards one another. And it makes me feel kind of like an outsider, which I am an outsider at this point. If I could get Colby, that would be 2 of us. That would be the only chance that I would have to make it. At this point, I don't have anything to lose.
The powers that be have predetermined long ago the pecking order here and also the elimination order, and Keith is up.
The only way it would work is if it would be 3 and 3,
and then you
and me with the most votes. I'd be gone.
Jerry's scared. She's worried that Keith and Tina and I are going to join together and mastermind a backdoor move to get rid of her. By far is going to be the toughest council for me because I don't agree with the order in which the union is voting.
This was not my original intended vote. However, on the way here to Tribal Council, a new scheme was developed. So in the spirit of the Olympics, let the games begin.
And then we get one more script being flipped in a way that I think fans of the show will likely recall. From Season 4, Marquesas, we have the underdog group of 5 completely changing the trajectory of this season in the second half when they banded together to take down the dominant alliance of 4, the Rotu 4. And context is really important here because through nearly 4 seasons now, the way the game was playing out was always us versus them. It was tribe v tribe, and nobody really went the other way, least of all succeeded in doing so anyway. We saw Kelly on Season 1 attempt to distance herself from the Tagi Alliance, but then that kind of failed. We saw another Kelly on Season 3 attempt to go against the power players on her original tribe at the merge, but that also failed. The way the game was played was all about sticking to your alliance from the tribe that you originated on when you were first marooned on location. And in Season 3, we saw a tribe swap occur, the first major twist, where prior to the merge, the tribes would now have to awkwardly work together to win immunity. Amusingly, this created another evolution to the game, at least for this twist anyway, where throwing challenges was now a viable strategy. In a game of us versus them, and them or they are now in your camp, why not force yourselves to go to Tribal Council, the only place where you can systematically eliminate them? Wait, are we talking about deliberately tanking? Yeah, kind of makes sense. Ethan and Kim thought this one up, and Silas was booted because of it. And Ethan then went on to win the show.
This may sound crazy, and I've never done this in my life. I'm an athlete. I go out to win. I've never fixed anything. Like, what would you think if we lost this next challenge on purpose?
The immunity challenge is a win-win situation. We win the challenge, great. We don't have to go to Tribal Council.
We lose, we end up going to tribal council, and I get to vote off my biggest threat.
With Season 4, it went the other way, where working with the enemy took a different form. Instead of awkwardly looking at each other at camp as a tribe divided, players began to utilize the other tribe to set themselves up to go deeper in the game. A combination of creating cross-tribal alliances, working with the enemy, turning the enemy into your ally, and overthrowing the majority alliance came into effect here. The final 9 votes of Season 4 is often regarded as one of the most pivotal moments for the evolution of strategy on Survivor, and this is why.
All right, Sean, you're the first casualty. You can take your box. Have a seat right over here in the viewing area.
Oh, 3 strikes and you're...
Where's Johnny Cochran? I want him on the phone right now.
Vesepia, join Sean in the waiting area.
Ow!
Kathy's out of the game.
This is the order how it's gonna go.
That's my boy.
You guys are cooking tonight.
Take your box.
Hey.
And join the group.
It's green.
Sean went out first, then V, then Kathy. I had some satisfaction that I was the one that cut Sean's last rope, so hopefully that will be an omen tonight.
I think it signaled us that there was a pecking order and we were included in it, even though we'd been told that that wasn't true.
I've just had this feeling, you know, especially after today's immunity challenge. I saw him hack down Pascal's coconut so fast, and inside I'm just like, there's got to be something change here.
The 8th person voted out, first member of our jury, John.
The next evolution is one of my favorites, and it comes from Season 5 Thailand, believe it or not, a season that is often overlooked and not well received by the fans then or now. It's an idea that was brought on by the winner, Brian Heidick, when he surveyed the landscape of his tribe and realized he could probably beat at least one of these players if the two of them were to ever reach the end of the game together. As he recognized, Survivor is often divided into 2 parts, both equally important, with the first being that you need to reach the final 2 or 3, depending on the season, and face the jury to even be eligible to win the game. Whether you are voted out first or right before the final tribal, it's all the same. I mean, sure, you get a little bit more money, but you're not winning $1 million. You don't get the opportunity to pitch your case to the jury for why you should win. And that second part is winning over a majority of that jury, or a plurality in the case of more than 2 finalists. Think about it, you can't win Survivor if you can't get enough jury votes, and you can't get jury votes if you can't reach that final tribal council. So there's 2 parts, both equally important, and Brian felt confident enough with the first one. He could see himself reaching the end if he played his cards right, if he laced his skates tight enough. But could he win over a jury of all of these wackadoodle personalities? Maybe, maybe not. But what if there was a way to increase the odds of him getting enough of those jury votes? This next evolution is all focused on the perception of your peers and recognizing who you stand a better chance at beating in the end. Instead of randomly chancing your odds to win at the final tribal against any of these people, Brian realized that his best bet was to be sitting next to one player in particular, Clay. Clay was not loved by this jury. He was brash, he spoke his mind, and he rubbed people the wrong way all too often. And knowing this, Brian implemented his strategy to protect Clay at all costs, to protect that goat that he was leading to the slaughter. Brian not only protected himself, but he went out of his way to ensure that his allies would turn on each other before they would turn on Clay. He believed Clay was his best bet to win, sitting next to him in the finals, and he was right, as they both reached the final 2, and Brian received a majority of the jury votes. Albeit it was closer than you might think.
I think Brian is a good guy. Him and I had a verbal alliance.
I trust Brian. I don't think Brian would ever look at me and try to dupe me on something, play me up for a fool.
Be straight with me. Honestly. I'm asking you brother to brother. Okay. Mine and next to go.
Yeah. Quite frankly, Clay does squat at camp. He has gone on 1 water run in 32 daes, and he swamped the boat when he went.
Clay doesn't do anything. He lays around all day. He doesn't go out, get wood. He doesn't go to the water hole. He does nothing. He just lays around all day.
When you know where everyone's head's at, it gives you that much more control. 1, I've got my trump card, Jan.
The 14th person voted out of the tribe.
Number 2, I've got my loyal and trustworthy soldier, Helen.
The 13th member voted out of the tribe, Helen.
My good friend, Uncle Clay. I know what he wants, he knows what I want. I know he doesn't want Helen, I know Helen doesn't want him. When I need to use that against each other, I will. You're gonna have friendships, you gotta cut off those friendships. You gotta keep stringing people along and bam, throw them a nice slider. Mr. Freeze is in the house, even though it's about 110 out here. Got my skates on.
Now, we've seen players forming alliances, changing their position within the alliances, turning on their allies, working with their opposition, and even throwing challenges to get ahead. This final evolution, although not the last evolution to the game, that's for sure, but one that I think is too significant to not mention here, begins with Season 11, Guatemala, and it's all due to the introduction of a little object called the Hidden Immunity Idol.
Hidden somewhere in the woods, there is an idol.
There's a little immunity idol about this big in a jungle that's this big.
This little rinky-dink island trinket, or in the case of Season 11, this jungle trinket, allowed a player to be safe before the votes were read. But it was a surprise immunity, unlike the immunity necklace granted at challenges. And it really wasn't until the following seasons that we saw the vote count begin to get wonky and unlike anything this game had seen before. For 11 seasons, the game was all about numbers. Whoever had more would win the day. In Season 12, we saw a strategy called the safe vote occur, where suddenly players had to vote around the idol. Because if it were played on a player, that person would have all the votes that were cast against them negated. Suddenly, voting for people who were less likely to hold this idol or have it played on them was a sound idea. This had never been seen before, and in Season 13, we saw players attempt the first split vote tactic, where an alliance would divide their votes between 2 or more players, all just to counteract this little idol negating their majority numbers. I don't think I can understate that this shift in voting methodology dramatically changed the game forever onward. With the inclusion of the idol in every season thereafter, this meant the vote was no longer as simple as just dumping them all on the biggest target. Even just the simplest of votes had an element of suspense, where it was no longer just who was getting votes, but what could be done about it after the fact too.
If we suspect someone has the idol, we should try to avoid voting for that person and vote somebody in his alliance out first. And there's 2 ways to defeat an army. One is to cut off the head, the other is to take away all the soldiers.
Plan B is like the next person in line. Who would be the next person in line? I think so. I think that seems to be the...
Yeah, we have to.
I would be agreeable to voting Jessica out because we think that Joe might have an idol or give an idol to Cole. And I think it's unlikely that Jessica has a hidden immunity idol.
To me, these are the greatest evolutions to the game of Survivor that encompass all parts of the formula from when it was first created. Alliances, positioning, challenges, and tribal votes. There is a lot to talk about, and even then, this is just the beginning. Albeit they are the most significant evolutions, but either way, let me know what you think about these evolutions and anything else that you think should get brought up that I didn't mention. Was Rob Cesternino robbed of a spot? Do I need to make another video about this? Regardless, thank you to my patrons for all your support, and thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to pander to that jury for a vote or 2 on your way out, and I will see you in the next one. Once I definitely look for the idol somewhere on the ground. Oh yeah, it is definitely somewhere hidden on the ground.
Now, when it comes to keeping the secret, man, I can't do it. This idol still eludes you. It seems nowhere to be found. It's not buried or concealed, nor directly on the ground.
Could be like in a tree.
Tree mail I got in my pocket, man. That thing is definitely by far on the ground, so to speak. I mean, I can't give away too many clues because I'm trying to save my own ass, but it is totally on the ground.
I think it's pretty amazing that Judd told everybody the clue that it's on the ground. And I followed him back here and he's looking in the trees. It's pretty interesting.
Judd, you lied in this game?
No, sir. Not yet. You know, it might happen, but as of this point in the game, no, I haven't lied about anything yet.